crisis. I've been here for 10.
Thanks for joining me today. It's Monday, March 29th. First, flame on. You know what to do. Hit that like button. Share this video. I appreciate it. It's been a while since I lit these torches, so let's see if they still work. Some interesting news happening in the coffee household, and perhaps I will share that with you soon. But today we're going to talk about the AP Stylebook and how the Associated Press is changing how we talk about the news. Let's go to the article from the New York Post. Here we are. Like White House, Associated Press won't use crisis to describe migrant surge at the border. So this came out on Friday. Approximately 300 migrants who crossed the Rio Grande illegally are transported to the U.S. Customs and Border Facility in Hidalgo County, Texas. Here's a picture. Kind of looks like a crisis to me. Let's see what they say. The White House still won't use the word crisis in referring to the surge of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. And now the Associated Press won't use the word either. In an internal memo first obtained by Futuro Media, the wire service told its reporters to only use, quote, accurate and neutral terms in reporting on the increase, and to avoid hyperbole in calling anything a crisis or an emergency. The situation, quote, does not fit the classic dictionary definition of a crisis, the AP memo says. So here we go. The Associated Press has decided to change how we report on this thing. How exactly did they report on it for, I don't know, the last 4 years? If I go here to the Goog machine and I punch in some dates, yes, there's a crisis on the border, and it's Trump's fault. Trump's right that there's a border crisis, but he's making it worse. Trump's critics are wrong about the border crisis. So is Trump. Is there a crisis on the U.S. border? Trump claims there's a crisis. What's reality? Border. This is from Vox. The migration crisis and the Trump administration's response explained. Here's a Greece-Turkey border crisis. Guess you're allowed to have crises in other countries. Border crisis. U.S. failure to respond to migration surge has created chaos. Well, all of these articles are before Joe Biden came into office. But now that Joe Biden is president, they've changed their mind. In fact, the White House changed their mind on this. A couple weeks ago, Jen Psaki accidentally called it a crisis.
That they would be partners in dealing with the crisis on the border.
But soon thereafter, she was corrected, and she corrected everyone. Psaki also again refused to call the migrant surge at the border a crisis, insisting children presenting at our border who are fleeing violence, who are fleeing terrible situations, is not a crisis.
But tonight, don't call it a crisis. I've been here for 10.
Well, if that's not a crisis, what the hell is a crisis? And that's when we talk about the AP Stylebook. On Friday, John Denizweski from the AP put out an article describing what's happening on the U.S. border with immigration at the U.S. border back in the news. It's especially imperative for the AP to consistently use accurate and neutral language in its coverage, along with giving proper context to border numbers, given the political rhetoric on the topic. And he goes on to describe that this is not the dictionary definition of a crisis, so don't use it, Associated Press. So first, the White House says it's not a crisis, and the Associated Press follows that up with saying, yeah, it's not a crisis. We've been calling it a crisis for a long time, year after year after year, but it's no longer a crisis now that there's a whole lot more and the situation got a whole lot worse. It's no longer a crisis. That's the thing with the Associated Press. The Associated Press Stylebook has an effect on all newsrooms all across the country. Your local news, will often quote the Associated Press. So if something is a certain way in the Associated Press, that's how it's going to be presented in your local news. And if you follow the Associated Press Stylebook on Twitter, I think that they do make many good recommendations on how to be more clear in communication, such as this tweet from last year. Use the article a before consonant sounds, a historic event, a one term. Sounds as if it begins with a W. A united stand. Sounds like you. So the A sounds like you. Or the united sounds like you. Use an before vowel sounds. An energy crisis. An honorable man. The H is silent. An homage. The H is silent. An NBA record. Right? So if it sounds like it starts with a H, use a. If it sounds like it starts with a vowel, use an. And that's a good thing. So I just want to be clear. They're not wrong about everything. But the AP Stylebook has gotten really political, and it does have an impact on how the news is reported. And again, if you can control the language, you can control what people think. This is right out of Orwell's 1984. Now, what do I think about this? I think what the Associated Press is doing is terrible. If I'm still allowed to use the word terrible, I'll have to check the AP Stylebook for that. But what they're doing is lying. What's happening on the border is a crisis. And if you lie to the American people and say that it's not a crisis, then they're not going to demand something change. They're not going to demand that things get better. That's how things get better, is you see a problem, you call it a problem, and then you can fix it. Right now, what's happening on the border is a crisis, and we need to call it a crisis so that we can address the situation. If you say, oh no, everything's fine, don't call it a crisis, you're not going to fix it. And we need to fix what's happening down there. We're not going to do that by lying to the American people like the Biden administration is doing. And we're not going to fix it by lying to newsrooms all across the country, which is what the Associated Press is doing with this change to their stylebook. But that's just my take on it. Do you have any thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to hit that like button. Have an awesome day. Peace.